Welcome to Multifamily Grit, where we bring in the experts to share their stories of the celebrations and struggles of one of the most important industries in the U.S., multifamily property management. Kerri sat down with Rebecca Norman, a compliance leader at an affordable housing property management and development company in Southern California. With more than 20 years in the industry, all with the same organization, Rebecca has grown from on-site roles into compliance leadership, bringing a unique perspective shaped by both hands-on experience and long-term industry evolution. Rebecca's story is rooted in courage and service. Starting in the industry just months after high school, she built her career by consistently stepping into the unknown, taking on complex programs like tax credits and project-based Section 8 when others hesitated. That willingness to not be afraid became a defining moment in her journey, launching a career centered on growth, leadership, and helping others succeed. Today, we dive into how Rebecca approaches leadership with intention and heart. In an environment filled with constant regulatory changes, new housing programs, and increasing complexity, especially in supportive housing, Rebecca focuses on simplifying the chaos. From creating clear policies and meaningful training to bridging the gap between corporate expectations and on-site realities, she is passionate about making her team's jobs easier. We'll explore why communication and training are often the biggest breakdowns, how she builds safe spaces for teams to ask questions, and why understanding your why is critical to long-term success. This is a conversation for anyone navigating change, building resilience, or looking to grow in a demanding but deeply impactful industry. Before we get started, this episode is sponsored by Fortress, the only core property management operating system built with an emphasis for affordable owners and operators. Fortress revolutionizes affordable management with features focused on automating housing assistance charges and payments to keep ledgers clean and accurate, centralizing file reviews and document storage through Fortress and AWS, and a free in-system smart waitlist to ensure your property stays in compliance. And don't forget, if you like what you hear today, please like, subscribe, and share with someone you think would enjoy this episode. Now let's get into it. Here's Kerri Davis sitting down with Rebecca Norman for a conversation about growth, leadership, and what it takes to thrive in an ever-changing affordable housing landscape. So, Rebecca, thank you so much for being on the podcast with me today.
Thanks for having me.
Now, before we get started, I'm going to ask you the question I ask all of my guests as we get started on here is I would love for you to take a moment to share with our audience how you got your start in the multifamily industry.
Well, I started fresh out of high school. I literally was graduated, 5 months prior. I had been working a part-time job and just really, wanted to get a full-time job with benefits. And I kind of just fell into the property management world. My best friend's stepmom needed somebody, so that's how I got kind of the hookup on the interview. And so just jumped right into it. I had a little bit of customer service experience previously, so that helped me. It was an entry role leasing consultant. Did not need knowledge on affordable housing or anything, which was great because I had no idea what that was. And then
most of us know before we get into it.
And then from there, I just worked my way up the ladder. I, at first, wasn't sure if it was something that was long-term. Did I like it? Did I not like it? But as I went up the chain and transferred properties, went to assistant manager, got more into the tax credit world, got into the HUD world, I did start to love it, funny enough. And so, did property management on site, all affordable housing for 15 years. And then from there, it was, I had that pivotal moment of, okay, what's next? What do I want to do? And it kind of just fell into my lap of, hey, we have this kind of compliance role. It's still on site, but it's more compliance geared. Do you want to try this? And I was like, right away, I said yes. There was no hesitation. I was like, you know what? It just sounded and felt right for me at the time. And I mean, sure enough, as I got into it, it everything worked really well. It flowed really well. My team, growing with my team in the compliance department, my boss, who currently still is my director, Julie, she, kind of helped to train me and kind of let me have my fun with developing our team. We went from a team of 4 to a team of 17 rather quickly. And so, yeah, I am now, still a compliance manager. So I've been compliance manager for 5 years now. And never looked back. I don't think I can imagine doing anything else but affordable housing.
Yeah, I love it. I know I feel like for some of us when we like fall into affordable housing and then it just fulfills, I think, that philanthropic
Mhm.
desire in our hearts, and then it's like hard to walk away from it after that. But I do want to ask, because since you've been doing this literally since graduation, how is your perspective, I think, of the industry or of what you are doing in affordable housing? How's your perspective evolved over time?
Oh gosh, I think that because I grew up with the industry as it kind of grew up, right? Because when I first started, um, I mean, project-based Section 8 for my company was still very new. We had no idea, we had no idea what we were doing. So I kind of learned on my own, and with laws and regulation changes, I think it just came together with what was going on in the world, right? With homelessness, with mental health illnesses, um, everything just getting more expensive, inflation, income not really following along in the same path as what everything costs. More people need and needed and still needs affordable housing. And then you have, the baby boomers all becoming seniors and retiring. And then now they're needing affordable housing because of losing their homes during the recession in 2008, right? And even now with, the housing market being very up and down the past few years, is just, I feel like it's trying to stay caught up with what's going on and the need, but it's so hard to because the need is so large, right? And there's all these new programs coming out, which is great, but I feel like the people who are creating these programs, creating this funding, they don't understand it from the ground level, right? They don't know property management. They don't know compliance, affordable housing on site, or, compliance department for what I do now. They don't understand how they work together, how it affects each other, how they overlap. Like, how do you stay in compliance with 3, 4, 5 different programs when they have conflicting rules and regulations, right? It's really hard. We figure it out and do it somehow, but it's very difficult. Great, we have the programs and funding, but making it work, for us doing the job, it gets a little hard. So I think seeing it evolve as I've grown up, um, change is scary. It's good, it's needed, but sometimes it's not fast enough. Sometimes it's not the right change. So I think that kind of goes with everything in life, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's such a great perspective to say, like the demand is increasing. There's intentionality behind, adding additional programs and additional funding, but it's not as thoughtful as it needs to be. Um, your example of, having multiple programs on a property that maybe conflict with each other, is really helpful. Are you seeing any other examples of that where you would say, where you wish someone creating these programs knew this?
Just with hiring staff, right? It's very easy to say, oh, I need a leasing consultant or a community manager for this property that has, their apartments, their affordable housing. They just it's looked at on a surface level, and so they're not really digging deep as to what really is needed on that site. You have a lot of properties that have permanent supportive housing programs, which is housing programs for homeless and persons with mental illnesses. That a person working on a property with residents with mental health illnesses or who were previously homeless, you really need a whole other skill set, right? It's not just customer service. It's not just like tech compliance or HUD compliance. It's social service work, right? And are they getting that type of training? So it's not just how I spoke on previously. How do we keep the property and project in compliance, right, for our investors, et cetera? But also, how do we make sure that the people running the properties can do their job, right? Can they really do their job efficiently? Can they really be successful there? Because that's, I mean, in my perspective, that's a lot to put on a person that you told them you're going to be a leasing consultant or you're going to be a community manager for this 50-unit building. And oh, by the way, you're going to work with a bunch of homeless people who have mental health illnesses, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely a lot of layers, a lot of things that need to be thought through that aren't really being thought through.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I want to actually take a step back towards something that you brought up. Your company was expanding and moving into these other programs, and it was new, and so you had to learn and figure it out. And you've talked about how the value of, number one, taking risks early in your career, and number two, not being afraid. So let's start on the taking risk side of things. What sort of risks have you taken in your career, and why is that so important to you?
Oh, I can think of two. The first one was when I was in my early 20s, and I was offered a role on a property that had project-based Section 8. And that's when our company had just started to get into that program. And nobody knew, like I said, how to run it or anything like that. So knowing that, right, okay, I was going to probably have to figure this out with my manager or on my own. I can look back and think I wasn't afraid. I just was excited of like a new opportunity. I was excited to learn something new. I was excited to be able to grow because nobody else was willing to really take that risk. And so I felt like, okay, well, here's my time to kind of see if I'm made for this. And if I can fit that role, right, to grow and become a manager, because really that was my goal. I wanted to be a community manager. I knew that. And so I knew I was going to need to take those risks and try new things. And so if I didn't, I wouldn't have gotten to where I'm at now. And even in my second opportunity that I can think of, was when I got offered the job as an on-site compliance specialist, essentially. I was living on site as a community manager, so that meant I'd have to lose my housing. And at the time, my husband wasn't working. And so even knowing that in the moment, like I said earlier, it just felt right for me. It felt like I couldn't say no. I mean, really, no was not even anywhere near in the back of my head. I was like, yes, I'll take it, right? And then I'm like, oh wait, I need to talk to my husband. But even then, I was like, you know what? It's gonna work out. It's just, I just felt it in my heart, and I have my faith. So a lot of my life has been, God has a plan for me. Whether I understand it or not, I'm going to trust it. And that was one of my biggest trust moments with God and my faith but like just everything about it just felt so right. And if I didn't say yes to that, right, again, I wouldn't be where I'm at now. I wouldn't have the opportunity to help so many people, not just residents, but also my employees, my teammates, my peers, um, the company, you know. Yeah, I mean, how can you get anywhere without some type of risk, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think that, what you're articulating, I've, read a lot of books about the importance of making just like trying to make all of your decisions from a place of like trust and almost like of love for yourself, like making decisions grounded in like this like peacefulness and trust rather than in fear. And I think that like when you make those decisions based in trust and faith that like it will work out, that like you'll find a way through it, rather than like the fear of the unknown or the fear of losing your housing or whatever it is. That those are the opportunities in life that allow you to like do something really special, but you have to be able to do that. I think but that's hard, right? I mean, it's hard for anybody, like the thought of like losing their housing. And I mean, a lot of people make decisions not to do something or not to change because of the fear of, like moving or not having certain stability or not having certain benefits or whatever that is. But at the same, and I get it, like I'm not knocking those decisions, but I do think that sometimes it can cause you to lose out on those adventures and those opportunities when you make those decisions from a place of fear.
Definitely, I agree. You kind of hold yourself back to those opportunities, right? They don't come knocking all the time.
Yeah. So well said. They tend to be a little bit more few and far between. It seems like the status quo is, what you're usually dealing with. So when you get those opportunities, it's so important. And so, you've talked about this, like you not taking risks and these pivotal moments in your career. And you've also said, like don't be afraid. And like, but especially in your role, like there's a lot to be afraid of. I mean, this industry, specifically what you do in this industry, can be really intimidating. The programs, the regulations, the repercussions of those. Like what do you do on your side, I guess, to number one, mitigate that risk? Because it's a big risk and there could be a lot of anxiety tied up in it. So like number one, what do you do to mitigate? And then number two, how do you deal with what the risk that is just inherent that you can't mitigate?
A lot of training. A lot of training. I mean, you're constantly learning, you're constantly relearning a lot of the same things over and over just to kind of make sure that they cement themselves in your brain as much as possible. There's not generally a lot of change in this industry, but at the same time, there's just so many rules that you're never going to remember them all. It's just not possible, And so another thing that helps to mitigate risk is having individuals on your team that are strong in things that you're not, right? Because I'm strong in project-based Section 8 housing. I know LIHTC, but my director is strong in LIHTC and she's familiar with project-based Section 8. And we knew that right off the bat. And so we fed off of that and fed off of each other. And so, she let me be strong in that, and I let her be strong in LIHTC. And so, we're able to bounce off of each other and help each other with the things that we're not familiar with or if we're unsure about something. But yeah, never stop learning, never stop taking training. And communication, definitely communication, right, with amongst each other in your team, but also from compliance, the department and corporate worlds to the site teams, right? You have to make sure you're keeping them in the loop and making sure that you're, bringing things to their attention right away and not holding back as much as possible to make sure that they're operating to their full capacity as well. For the
Yeah.
things that we can't mitigate, um,
Yeah.
just remembering to give everybody grace. I think because of such demand of this role, and to make sure that, to your point, we're mitigating all the, non-compliance issues, avoiding fees, penalties, fines, whatever you call it. We're still human, remembering there's still a person on the other side of this, on who has this role, right? We're not just a role. But yeah, just giving grace, and then, learning from the mistakes that we do make, because we're gonna make them. It's unavoidable,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I couldn't agree more. I think that it is so important to remember that, no matter how much training you have, or no matter how many like policies and procedures you put in place, or even how great the people are, like, people, we're human, we make mistakes.
Mhm.
And so I think, like, making sure that you have the right people in the right places and that you truly trust them is so important. But once you have that, then having that grace for yourself and for others is a game changer.
And I mean, if and when a mistake has happened, okay, how do we move forward from that, right? So let's not stay stuck in the mud, right? How do we get out of that
Hmm.
spot, learn from it, grow from it? What can we do to prevent it in the future if there were blind spots that we weren't aware of, right? I mean, every
Yeah.
every opportunity is a learning opportunity, and you really have to take it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think this goes really well into the next thing that I want to talk to you about, because obviously, like, the world that you're living in right now is just full of an incredible amount of change. So you have all these new programs, HOTMA updates, new layering regulations. And so, how do you and your team keep up and manage through all this change?
Do we keep up? No, I'm just kidding. um,
Great question.
because sometimes it feels that way. It sometimes it feels like we're never keeping up with what we have going on. We can't catch up with what we have going on, whether it's company wide or industry wide, right? But
Yeah.
again, using individuals for their strengths on your team, right? Delegating, a lot of delegating, a lot of reading up on articles, and trying as much as possible to stay in the know. Sometimes it can be information overload, and then you're like, where do I go from here? You don't even know how to start. But I mean, as much as we can, we try to stay ahead of things as soon as they're brought to our attention, and just think, okay, how do we handle XYZ, and how do we create or adjust our policies and procedures from this new change? And then, again, communication, right? Making sure we're communicating amongst our team, meeting together. Are we all on the same page? Do we all understand it the same way? Because sometimes different people interpret things different ways, right? And so we want to make sure we're all on the same page in that aspect. And then from there, sharing it with the site teams to make sure, again, they're in the know, and they can do their job efficiently.
Yeah. I mean, it is a lot of work to manage all of these changes that we're dealing with. And I agree with you. Like, are we staying on top of it? I mean, sometimes that's not always within your
Right.
control, right? I mean, like, some of these changes that have been happening, like HOTMA is such a great example of it, because it's rolled out in some programs and in some states and then not in others. And yet we've been told it's going to roll out and then it doesn't, or it does roll out, but the state rolled it out like so quickly without enough notice, or didn't have their forms ready, that now your
Yep.
software isn't
Mhm.
compliant because your software isn't ready with the new forms yet, because they didn't have enough time to put into the system. So it's like, a part of it is like you're truly, like, your planning, your preparation, your ability to stay on top of things, but then there's still a part of it that's even like outside of your control.
And um that's always going to be a thing, right? Those items that are going to be out of your control. And so not letting those things get the best of us, right?
Yeah.
Still making sure that we're performing to the best of our ability, that we're giving our A game as much as possible. And on those days where we feel like we can't and we're just, overwhelmed with what's going on, kind of as much as we can, taking that step back to try to refocus, to realign things, to reorganize as much as possible. But yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for me was stuff like that, because we dealt with a lot of that in California, where it was
Yeah.
now, but it was effective January 1st, and right now it's we're in the end of January, but we don't have the forms, and the tick isn't updated, and our software isn't updated because of the forms not being available. We dealt a lot with that, and I understand the frustration on the site level and the stress on the site level, because I used to be there, right? And so how am I
Yeah.
supposed to do my job? How am I supposed to have the right information on the tick when it's not even in the software for me to print? Um, and so just being understand from my standpoint on in my position, being understanding, being available. Um, I mean, I can't say too many times, communication, communication, communication. Be
Yep.
transparent with everybody, and then it doesn't take away the stress, but I feel like it helps them to understand, be more understanding, and just, okay, well, this is what I have to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I love that you emphasize those two things so much. Communication and
Hmm.
training. Like how important those two things are in order to make sure that your team and the site teams have have the most opportunity to create success. That like communication is so important. You've also relayed that to taken that same concept of communication and kind of put it into like how does leadership see whether or not like that this property or the site is actually being successful, and how do you mitigate that disconnect between the two? And you've even said to me like a lot of times corporate doesn't really understand because they haven't done it, and that's understandable, right? Like not everyone who has gotten into a corporate position, I mean, for some of them corporate could mean like
Hmm.
accounting, like someone who's in the accounting department, like in a lot the vast majority of our accountants haven't worked on site. So how do you, because you think that that is obviously a really important piece of all of this, so how do you work to bridge that gap between like the corporate team members who've never worked on site and like how it actually functions on site?
I mean, as much as I can provide some insight to it, I mean, even for me, at times, I know I'm probably disconnected now because it's been 5 years since I've been on site, and a lot has changed, right? Not even just industry wide, but within our company. And so I know, they do a lot more on the site level, and more is expected of them on the site level. And so I think, making sure that we're talking to the right people who can give that insight, asking questions, asking the right questions, being open to hear the other side out as much as possible. I I feel like a lot of the times what the biggest part that's missing is the why. Why do I need this
Okay.
report right now? Why do I need this information right now? Why do I need XYZ, right? Um, when we don't give that piece of the puzzle, then it just feels like a demand, right? This is just another thing on my plate that I have to do. This is just another thing on
Yep.
my to-do list that I'm never going to get to. And that's from any side of the fence, right? It could be from a site level position to a corporate level position in any department. I think that just taking the time to explain the why and really understand it will definitely make it easier and bridge that gap for sure.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. And I think it's that still boils down to, your original like training and communication. Like, people need to be taught to explain the why. People need to be taught to be allowed to ask
Mhm.
the why. It's that part of that training, and then of course communication. And like, yes, it may be an extra step to explain that why, but like how important that communication is. And if you truly trust those that you work with, then it becomes really easy to, I think, take the time and lean in to share that why with them.
Definitely. I mean, for the property management role, especially for affordable housing, right? Our site team is the heart of the company, right? That's where it starts. And so, but also, right, it from the other side of the fence, for them, like they still need every single one of us here in the corporate office, whatever department it is. They still need accounting to help make sure that their bills get paid. They still need asset management to ensure that their project is running efficiently, and that their
Yeah.
CapEx items get completed. They still need the compliance department to, teach them and make sure that they're moving in qualified households, right? We need each other. And so I think sometimes we forget that part because we're so siloed at times. And we're so stuck in our box of this is what I need. We forget there's other people out there, other teammates, employees, peers, whatever you want to call them, that we all need each other, and we kind of have to be that support to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so curious, because you talk about the site team being like the heart of the community, and I agree with you. I just think that it's interesting that in at a lot of companies and in a lot of circles, there's a big conversation happening right now as to, you know, it goes as far as whether or not site teams are needed at all. But it's starting with like how many people are needed on the site teams. And I don't think that's a conversation that is, I mean, I do know of some properties that don't have any site teams at all, but it's few and far between that are able to find success with that yet. So I think that's pretty far into the future. But I'll take a step back and just ask you, what are you currently focused on? Like looking forward, like what are you thinking about where the industry is going, or what you should be focused on, or how AI is going to impact your team and the on-site teams? Just what are you thinking about as you look to the future?
I think for me is how can we best use AI as a tool rather than a crutch or a replacement for something. Because AI isn't perfect either, right? And so,
Yeah.
and although they can help the site teams with calls for work orders, or I had heard about some software, I don't even remember what it's called, but to help people get on the wait list, right? That can be helpful. That can help save people time on site to do other tasks, but then you lose that person to person interaction. You lose that building of a relationship with your resident, because that really is where it starts, right? If you want to have a
Yeah.
successful relationship with your resident, it starts with them applying for your wait list, right? um and if it starts with a bad experience, then that's how it's going to be when they become your resident. And then for compliance wise, right? AI for me is just how can that help support my team? Because there's just so much that has to be done, so much monitoring, so much information gathering, checking, etc. Right? Okay, so how do we use that to make our jobs a little more efficient, a little easier, again, to be able to handle other tasks that cannot be handled by AI? And so just trying to think of ways to make that work for us the best way it can and make our jobs or our lives a little easier. Because it's just going to keep growing. It's just going to keep adding up, right? As the industry grows and evolves. It's from my 20 plus years of being in this industry from site to compliance department, that's what it's become. It's just more forms, more reporting, just more.
Yeah, I think that's a very good word for it. Just more. um, I like it. I like it. Well, Rebecca, this has been such a phenomenal conversation. I've really enjoyed chatting with you. And of course, before we wrap up, I've definitely got a couple more questions. And I'm super excited for this first one because you spent 15 years on site. So I'm very excited to see where this one leads. So I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind sharing a story with us about from your time in the property management industry.
Probably the most rewarding time was when I managed a senior building. I started
Okay.
there at the lease up. So, first manager, you know, moved in all the first residents into their new homes. And there was one lady, her name was Exa. I remember her name, Quintanilla. And so she was there with her daughter. Her daughter was moving her in. And I remember, I'm going to get emotional. I remember we got into her apartment and it was brand new,
Okay.
right? Like I said, it was a brand new built community. And the daughter, and the ex started crying. And I'm like, oh my gosh, why are you guys crying? And the daughter said, this is so beautiful. I'm so happy for my mom to finally have a home that is safe, that is, has running water, has heating, because she was living in a garage. And this lady was, I think, in her mid 60s, right? And she was by herself. She didn't have her spouse with her. He had already passed. But, I can't imagine my own mom living in a garage, having to, and she said she had to go outside to get to the bathroom, and I mean, I just, we don't realize how many people are in that situation. And so being able to help somebody out in that way, that story always stuck with me, because I just, when you're doing a lease up, it's so fast and it's so busy. Your focus, when you're a site manager leasing whatever position you hold, is I need to hurry up and fill these units. I need to hurry up and get these files approved, right? That's your focus. And it's nice. It's rewarding when you can really pause and see and hear and feel what impact you're making in somebody's life. So, and I was in my mid 20s at the time. And so I think that a lot of those experiences shaped who I am today, right? As a person, I'd like to think that I've always been a kind person, a helpful person. But I think that when you have experiences like that, they really shape you, and your mind and your heart and stuff. So yeah. I still call them my seniors. Yeah. No, yeah, they're my seniors. I was there for 7 years at that property. So
Oh
yeah,
my goodness,
that
so
was the longest I
long.
was at a property. And I grew up there, because when working there throughout those 7 years, I got married, I had a baby, I became a mom, and they saw that. So I had all these adoptive grandparents. They threw a bridal shower for me. They threw a baby shower for me.
Oh,
Yeah, it was a great property. So, but yeah, it was definitely hard to leave when I left.
oh my gosh, that's such an incredible story, Rebecca. It's so moving. And I love you tying it back to that impact, like truly feeling the impact that you're making, because you're right. Like a lot of times we get stuck in the like checking the
Hmm.
boxes part of
Hmm.
it all, rather than the people part of it, which is really why we do what we do.
Yeah.
So it's really incredible. But the checking the boxes is
Yes.
so important but not for that, you can't continue to do
Yes.
it. So
We still need to have good files.
yeah. So that you can go build the next one and do it all over again. Well, Rebecca, thank you so much for sharing that story. I am also excited to ask this last question of you. So is there a book that you would like to recommend to the listeners?
Yes. So I'm not much of a book reader, but I do enjoy Audible. And
Okay,
so,
yeah.
one of the books that I really loved hearing, was Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. And Brene Brown has amazing books. I mean, you can learn a lot from her books, but Daring Greatly, I really loved because it spoke on vulnerability and how that is really a strength and how to look at it as a strength rather than a weakness. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you're really exposing yourself to things that you maybe would not be exposed to, right? And you learn a lot more about yourself and others, and they learn about you, and themselves as well in the meantime. But, the book really reflected, that was the main point or the main topic, but it touched on how it can help or affect you in work, in parenting, in relationships in general. So, yeah, I mean, I'm a pretty sensitive person. And so, but it takes a lot for me to open up to people. And so, yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed that book. I learned a lot from it. And so, as we all want to grow and develop and become better tomorrow than we were today, right? So that one really is a good one.
Oh, I love it. Well, Rebecca, thank you so much for sharing that. I have not read a lot of Brene Brown. I agree with you, though. I love Audible. It is the way that I am able to listen to as many books as I am able to listen to.
Yes.
Sit down and read when I don't have to do anything else is very difficult. Mom to another. But yeah, thank you. Anyway, she's a phenomenal author. And so I think and I do agree with you. I think vulnerability is a massively underrated skill or character trait as well. Well, Rebecca, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with me today. This has been a fantastic conversation. It's been wonderful getting to know you and discuss kind of who you are and what you're doing. And I think that you're making such a large impact in our industry and in affordable housing. And I think that, a lot of times it's easy to not necessarily see the people who are behind the scenes keeping this all functioning and keeping order within all the chaos and all the things that all the change that you're dealing with. But you're obviously doing something really special. So thank you so much for taking the time to share that with our listeners today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Multifamily Grit. I hope you enjoyed hearing Rebecca Norman's incredible journey in affordable housing and compliance leadership. Her story is such a powerful reminder that growth starts when we stop being afraid to raise our hand, take chances, and lead with heart and service to others. We also want to give one more shout out to Fortress, our episode sponsor. Fortress is committed to revolutionizing affordable property management with smarter, more efficient solutions that keep communities thriving. If you found value in today's episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with a colleague who would appreciate Rebecca's insights on leadership, communication, training, and supporting on-site teams through the ever-changing affordable housing landscape. Until next time, stay gritty, stay passionate, and we'll see you back here soon.